some of those that straggle in from the night's activities will be just fine. First of all, my name is Rick Dillinger. I teach at Elk City Public Schools with my wife, Carrie. We've been there 6 years. We followed the legend, Mr. Larry Long, who had taught there for 41 years. It's had its ups and downs, and overall, though, I think it's been a good situation. We are married still together, working together. That's a challenge in itself. I've worked in multi-teacher departments. I've worked by myself in small schools, so there's no real advantage. It just depends on what you fit into and where you want to go with your career. But when I was coming out of college at Tarleton, I had a professor, Dr. Don Knotts, that told me, he said, there's two things you don't want to mess up in your whole teaching career: the money and officer elections. Don't mess those things up. And so when you're doing those two things, you have to really keep in mind fairness and integrity. And Mr. Farquhar and Mr. White, we've talked about integrity and building our profession and things of that nature, and they're leading our Southwest area really well as far as the OATE. I can't even spell it. It's the Ag Teachers Association. Let's do it that way. Texanize it. But they're leading us in a direction, and having integrity with our funds is important. How many of you know your superintendent and their background, or your financial person and their background? How many of you get to know them? Okay. The lady that we work with that confirms our POs and does our accounting, I know what her favorite Sonic drink is. We know that. Okay, so when we're getting ready to take blue and gold and take her $30,000 or $40,000 in blue and gold money, she gets that Sonic drink delivered to her every day before I take a big deposit. Cost me $2. What am I getting out of my money, my investment? The ROI on that deal is taking care of her, letting her know, hey, I appreciate what you're doing. I'm getting ready to bring you a lot. I've got it checked. I'm going to make your job easy, but I appreciate what you do. So managing and taking care of those people. My superintendent loves some McAllister's tea. So every time we come to Yukon or someplace like that, we grab him some McAllister's tea and give it to him. We haven't asked anything strategic or over the top from him because we try to do a lot of grant writing. If I could encourage you in a lot of things about grant writing, that's how you're going to get your big ticket items. And career tech, I taught in Texas. We're blessed to have career technology grants that we have a fair chance of getting if you put the work in. It's like Mr. Jones said yesterday, right to the rubric, you'll get it. Tanya Middleton said yesterday, if you're the battery operated tools, guys, she's dead on the spot about that. That's a technology thing you can get, and you can get those Milwaukee tool packs, and you can update your shop equipment very easily. Okay, some key vocabulary or key things that I keep in mind when I'm doing money. And my wife and I share the duties. She is very organized with the blue and gold order sales, things of that nature, and I do the 412 monies. I make sure we keep that evenly distributed. And then we both work on activity funds and expenditures. But we have some vocabulary, some rules that she and I stick to. And so we don't have to answer our hard questions at the end of the year. 412 funds come from the OK Career Tech. And as I was telling Mr. Farquhar and his new teaching partner, I don't remember your last name. Seahoffer. In Texas, we were happy if we got a $1,500 budget for both ag teachers combined. Here we're protected, each one of us, the state legislator gives us a really nice, comfortable budget, and we said, well, it doesn't, with inflation and things, hey, it's better than other states. We have a guaranteed truck per ag teacher. That's a state deal. There's a lot of benefits to teaching in agriculture that we don't really count our blessings a lot of times, but I think if you have been on the other side of the state line and come over, you would see that we have a lot of beneficiaries that other states don't. Especially if you've ever, here's a plug for Region 2, go Go to Region 2 conference, and you will see how well we're taken care of compared to other states. But 412 funds come from the Career Tech to your district, and they are designated to spend on your program, okay? And they have to be spent by June 30, because that financial office has to give a state report of how it's been spent. Now, it's your job, our job as the teacher, to make sure we distribute that. So if you're in a multi-teacher department, each one of you gets a set amount, and for example, my wife, we sit down in July once, because July 1's our day, we get to start, but we sit down and we say, okay, here's your greenhouse program, here's your $13,000 or whatever the amount is, where do you want to do your POs to? And then here's your shop and wildlife section, what do you want to do? We kind of talk each other's plan, and we talk about, because I need her perspective of, okay, well, we have the project auction here, how much are we going to allocate for this or that? So we go through and do a general 412 plan on our board, and then we make our POs from that, or our purchase requests. Activity funds are the monies that you and your chapter members raise to support your chapter POA for the year. These funds can be audited since they're managed within the school district finance office, but you do have control of how they are spent. And it must be, anyone can come in and request to see your activity funds. Okay? So we all have someone that has a burn their saddle for us. It's in every town. It's going to happen. You're not going to keep everybody happy. Okay? But if you legitimately keep records of your monies, okay, you don't have to answer hard questions. Okay? We have a rule just in our FFA chapter. If we want a big ticket item, let's say we want to buy a trim chute. Okay? That item, we get 3 quotes, and then we do let the student members vote on it. If they vote no, we don't buy it. It's a big ticket item. But if we have a pair of cordless clippers, they won't work anymore, they run down, it's $300 or $400, and we do that. We just set our chapter officers help set those limits. But we do give them the right to come in and set a budget for the POA. And how many of you do a POA? Okay, AET, we learned something at that workshop. Boy, that's a good investment right there. That AET investment, spending time in that program of activities manager deal, we gave our kids, here's how much we want you to spend on a chapter meeting. Here's how much we want to spend on chapter banquet. Here's this. Develop your plan. Here's your limit. You make the budget. And so when we do our POA, they know their dollar amount, and we do our officer retreat right after school gets out. So we had ours right at the end of May. They went in and they did that, and now they're just ironing out in our national chapter application. They're ironing their POA out so it'll line up when we do our activities this year. Number 3, budgeting is a proactive strategy that your administration can back you with. We give them our plan. So in July here, when we're working on getting our budget worked out, we'll say, here's our tentative budget. It's not a line item deal. We don't put down, we're going to spend $43.70 on hardware. We just put Ace Hardware, $500. We just give them a general budget. And we give them a timeline, and then in the reasoning, we put hardware for projects, this and that. Now, if we're going to build a project to sell at our project auction, we don't do a labor auction anymore. We do a project auction. If we're going to do a project that's going to sell out of that, we try to get donated materials. We try to use monies that will go back from our funds back to our funds. Now, there are some superintendents that won't care if you buy $40 worth of bolts and use it on a project and sell on your FFA auction, but you need to communicate that with your administrator. Having that open line of communication will be good. Some districts receive Carl Perkins grant. We receive Carl Perkins grant. Carrie and I have to write that for our school district. If your district has Carl Perkins money and is not in a consortium, make sure that if you want your program in that, you have to be in the application process, and it's due May 5th. That's another due date that we always work with. We start working on that thing when they release our allotted amount from the feds in January. She and I start sitting down and working on that. It takes about 2 months to write that application. But we certainly do that. And that's what I call your big ticket items. Carl Perkins, anything that's going to enhance technology. Just remember, technology upgrades. We got a Epilog laser printer that's going to lead into, we got a Westcott plasma machine we wrote Carl Perkins for. So she and I, since we've been at Elk City, have written Perkins and Career Tech and things of that nature. Now, if you're in a 2-teacher program, for example, just hypothetical, your PID numbers are separate. So if you wrote one year, you write it the next year, and you just keep going. So Altus has 3, so they're on a 3-year rotation of writing a grant. Now, will you receive it? Not necessarily, but you need to be on that rotation, get used to writing it, and stay into practice. And I would give this tip: save your old applications. Save your old applications. I wrote one 2 years ago. I didn't get it, and a lot of it was the wording. And so now that I've gone back and I've reworked my wording, this next year's my turn. I'll be writing a Career Tech grant and do that. So don't get your feelings hurt if you don't get a Career Tech grant. Okay, it's got to kind of be, it needs to be spread around, and I think they do the best they can at doing that. But if your district doesn't have Carl Perkins grant, let's say they're in a consortium with a VOTEC, that's where your Carl Perkins money is going, and that's your students at your district are still getting serviced by Carl Perkins. Some other things. Now we really, 5, 6, and 7 are things that we really look at when we make our budget. Student-centered expense is one that's spent directly on a student project, travel, uniforms, meals, etc. Anything that directly affects a student. So in Carl Perkins, not Carl Perkins, 412 money, we're a project-based teaching class. So we don't, traditional textbook and things of that nature, we use ICV as our base to start with, but we do project-based learning. And so our projects are student-centered. If they're going to be sold at a project auction, we do not use 412 money on that. We use activity funds for an activity fund raiser. That's just something to protect us. It's not a district rule. It's not a state rule. That's just something that kept me, that I was taught a long time ago. Just don't mix the money. Program expense is defined as one that enhances your program in any way, such as curriculum, equipment used for instruction. ICV, we jumped on that deal they had 2 years ago where you could get a 6-year package at a discount for multiple teachers. We jumped on that and wrote that into Carl Perkins. Okay, that was one of our big ones. And then our 412 money we use to, like, when we're going to teach an initial floral design class, we spend some 412 money on getting initial floral design stuff. She uses real flowers and greenery and things like that to teach it. And we teach all our Ag 1 students at the beginning of the year how to do a floral arrangement, because then we can take those to the county fair and they can enter those and it gets them exposure and things of that nature. But the big reason is we're training them because homecoming is a big deal in Elk City, and we're getting them ready for homecoming moms and things of that nature. So we use 412 money on the initial project, and then if they want to make a mom for themselves, then that money's spent out of our activity fund. So anything that they could take home, I would say activity fund, activity fund, activity fund. We pay our program, our FFA affiliation dues out of 412 money. That helps us with our activity funds. And here's why we do it. We can pay it out of our affiliation dues out of 412 because it's a student organizational fee, and the law says we can. And then we because September 1, what's the big thing on September 1? what do you have to start ordering? MFE ALD tickets, and that's a huge PO for us. So instead of having that two big bills out of one account, we use that 412 money for our affiliation dues, and then we come in there September 1, because none of the kids know if they want to go to MFE or ALD, because you only had them for 2 weeks. So we get our allotted tickets from the state. We say, okay, you can get 10. We buy all 10, and then we start working on the kids after that. Now, how do y'all do your MFE ALD tickets? Do the kids pay half, or do they pay all of it?
So it depends.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's half.
Yeah.
It depends sometimes where we pay on it.
Yeah. This year, because of inflation and things like that, we're going to try to do a work off. We're trying something new. We're going to work them off. And so we have students that can't afford it, but they want to go. So they can come and work at the ag building. They help me work on projects that we're going to sell in our project auction. They do things like that. They keep their hours in their AET, and that's how we work it off. And it also gets me an AET journal entry. I mean, it's kind of a multi-deal. But we do that. But those big ticket expenditures early on, you kind of have to time them out a little bit. Teacher expense. Now, I would encourage you to do this. If you're teaching a welding class, you need to have the correct PPE on. So have a welding jacket. Have the correct welding helmet. Have a welding cap, the gloves. Spend some money on yourself to teach the class properly. Okay? Now, those items are purchased with 412 money. They don't go to Rick's house. They stay at the school. I have a locker there. All that stuff stays there. So if I left Elk City, it would still be sitting in that locker. Okay? But you need to do that. And also training. The more professional development that you can go to better yourself as an educator, the better off you're going to be. Mr. Farquhar will tell you, if you're never trying to improve, what are you doing? What are you doing? You have to constantly try to improve, because you got to keep up. It changes. This is going to be my 27th year. It is not the same as it was 2 years ago. It's not the same as it was 10 years ago. It's constantly evolving, and we're going up and down these hills and valleys, and it's just, you got to get trained. And some of those workshops yesterday were so great. Tim Taylor, young ag teacher, really brilliant, taught me a lot. Marty Jones, brilliant, taught me a lot. Different kind of programs that I have, but there's something I can take away from them that make it better for me. But make sure that you use the PPE. I would not buy your work PPE out of your own pocket. Okay? Save that money for your kids. I've learned the hard way, having my own kids, that, you save it and buy their T-ball club, ball bats and gloves, and I can buy my work clothes that I'm going to spend at school out of 412. These are some things that ag teachers taught me. I didn't put this one on there, but I've always remembered this. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. He wants us to listen twice as much as we talk. And so when I go to a meeting and whoever's up there talking, I give that respect. I'm quiet. I'm listening. I'm trying to pay attention to what they're doing. But here's some things that I've had my supervising teachers and superintendents teach me along the way. Number one, always get a quote. Get a quote, and make sure that quote's good for more than 30 days. Okay? Especially on your career tech grants. If you get that thing, because they're due, March 1st? February 1st. So when you're doing that quote in January, during jackpot season, and it doesn't come through till July 1, you got to make sure that quote's long enough. And what the inflation is right now, a vendor that will hold to that earned your business if they'll hold that quote. But always get a quote before you submit a purchase request. We're not required to staple a quote to our request, but I do it anyway. It's just a little cover myself protection. I have had colleagues in this profession, they just ordered a set of whatever. No PO, no nothing, and then try to get the school to pay for it, and they're not going to pay for it. They're not. Have that quote, have an approved purchase order in your hand before purchasing anything. Okay? And here's the thing, y'all. We don't get trained in school finance well enough on a block situation, and the rules change so often, it's hard to know everything. So just some general, common, integral ethics will go a long ways for you. Have that approved purchase order. That's a common sense thing. If you can buy local, do it. Okay? It's not cheaper, and sometimes it's not better, but they're going to come to your project auction. And they're going to spend, and their kids are going to come through, kids or grandkids are going to come through your program. Do that. If you can buy local, do it, because they're the ones that are going to support your local program and say thank you and take them a ball cap. It works out. Okay? Go down to the co-op. Used to go down to the co-op and drink coffee, and never bought a lot at the co-op because I couldn't afford fertilizer and stuff. But hey, I drank coffee with them. And they would come to my program auction. They would work on it, trying to support us. If you can't buy it local, I'm telling you, Amazon is the game changer when making your money need to stretch. Because when you look up an item, they give you a lot of choices. A lot of choices to look through. And the shipping, if you buy Prime, my wife taught me, if you buy Amazon Prime, and our school district has an Amazon account, we can get free shipping on a lot of things, so we do Amazon if we can. Learned this when I moved over from Texas to Oklahoma, because you're like, oh wow, $13,000 per teacher. You got spread that sucker out. Don't spend it all in the first month you have it. Okay? When I say that is just because you have a blanket PO doesn't mean you have to go out and buy it all right then. You want to spread it out. And especially that right after OYE, we're all tired, right? We've been in there for 11 days. We're tired. And now we want to transition the CDE contest. Having 412 money to train CDE teams is important, okay? Especially when you're going to buy dairy foods, milk quality products, dairy foods, poultry, practice, things of that nature. We spend 412 money on livestockjudging.com because we can do horses, dairy cattle, normal livestock judging. We do a lot of things on that. Agronomy, we buy seeds to study agronomy with. So we save some money for CDE time. So we on the calendar that Carrie and I work off on a board is CDE has its color, and so we mark that time period off in its color. And we want to make sure we designate we're going to have money for that. This thing that Tim Taylor had yesterday, if you scan this, you can color code your POs by what you're going to do with them. And so this is a great deal. It's free. I like free stuff. So he's sharing that with that. Okay, number 6, always try to spend your 412 money. Spend it all by June 30. What's the rule? You have to spend 80% of it, right? That's what they say, oh, well, you spent your 80%. Well, where's that 20% left? Okay? Here's what we do in our planning in the month. We know we're going to do PD in June. They have to spend it by June 30. We know we're going to hit PD workshops, so travel to this event. Travel to the AT deal. We used to have Lincoln come to Meridian Tech. I used to attend that one. PD, Region 2, anything that's professional development, save some money. That last 20%, save it for professional development. Make yourself better. Okay? Try to attend the workshops that you don't feel like you're as strong at during the school year. Try to attend those and get some insight. And never put yourself in a position to answer hard questions, okay? The worst thing that I've never had to do this, but I've had teaching colleagues do this. They've had to come at the end of the year bring all the records they had. Some of them kept them in a shoebox. Some of them didn't even have any. And have to answer, well, why'd you spend money on this? Why? I mean, you bought a new popper for your pickup out of activity funds. It was more than $5,000. Did you get chapter approval? You have to do those things, okay? I've never in my teaching career got to buy a brand new livestock trailer. I wouldn't even know how you'd finance that thing now, okay? So where do you spend that? I can't tell you. I don't know how you'd buy that. Mr. Bruce probably had to tell you that, or that may come from your superintendent. I don't know. Large purchases like that, but I've never done it. And you can't buy it with Carl Perkins. So I don't know. I've never got to do it. So there might have to be a workshop on that someday, how to buy big equipment. Okay, general budgeting. Just make it simple. It doesn't have to be hard, okay? Make it real simple. Blanket PO. Who knows what a blanket PO is? Mr. Bruce. It's a PO that you can make. The school board has to approve all 412 expenditures, okay, at a monthly board meeting. So if you know you're going to, let's say Wheeler welding materials, you're going to spend $4,000, make a blanket PO to Wheeler Metal Products, go into your Excel or Google spread, color code that for shop, Wheeler Metals, put the PO number in there, and then anytime you need to go throughout the year, you don't have to write another purchase order request. It's already been approved, and then you can just go down there and get a ticket, print out a copy of your purchase order, send that in. Always sign your receipts. That's a state mandate. I don't know if anybody's told you that, but you have to sign every receipt. But you can do that. General budget funds for the school year. Hey, they just want to know a plan, okay? I know our superintendent is big on, he lets us know every quarter we have a school meeting, and here's where the state of the district is, and we have a budget. Are we on target? Are we going over? What adjustments is he going to make? So having our plan in place helps him out with his plan. Budgets will show your administration that you have a plan to execute and a general timeline. That's why I say you don't have to do a line item, but a general timeline. Like that color coordination of here's PD, it's green, it's at the end of the year. They know in June, they're going to spread it out all year. They're going to professional development. So they know our timeline by the color code of the budget that we turn in. And we put a legend at the bottom. This color means this is this, and here's kind of the general time period we're going to spend it. Chapter officers need to have help put a financial plan together. I've talked with an ag teacher. He's guarded over that activity fund. I talked with him, and I didn't even know how much we had. We had to submit our request to him, and that's different people do it different ways. My wife and I, we both know what the amount is. We share this Google sheet together, and when we make a request or things like that, whoever's made the purchase request, we put the PO number and initials by it, who's done what, so that we know how it's spent. And now that I've learned that you can put your receipt with that PO, hey, I'm going to put that in there for extra documentation. We give them a spending limit for each event. Let them know the funds have to be carried over to cover big expense. A lot of the kids we've got $7,000 in May. Why are we not spending that? And I tell them, you have to carry over because you got September 1, you got a big money expenditure. And then when we're National Convention year, because we go every other year, we start making big expenditure requests for hotels and things of that nature to get ready to go to National Convention. So we have to carry some over. On a non-National Convention year, we spend a little more at the end of the year for officer retreat training. On a National Convention year, we spend a little less, or we try to raise more because we want to carry more over into August and September for those big expenditures coming up. Some schools will make chapter members pay for camps and leadership conferences. If it's an educational event, Stand and Deliver, State Convention, anything like that is educational FFA related, the chapter will pay for the lodging and one big meal. Okay, if they want to go to the concert or they want to do souvenirs, we have the kids pay that fee. If it's going to benefit them personally, we make them pay it. We do not pay for concerts, and we don't pay for souvenirs. If they want something like that, they pay for that. But the chapter, anything that's educational, we will cover. Alumni camp, MFE, ALD, we cover that. Okay, we don't pay. Now, I've sent my son to next levels on the sheep and pig side. That comes out of mom and dad's pocket. That is not a school expense. Even though they call it an educational deal, I don't want my kid to be the example at the board office. Why'd you pay for your kid out of that deal? I've never paid for any kids' camp where they're going to benefit down the road financially. They have that opportunity. I just don't do that. But anything educational, it's a personal, ethical call. I just don't want to get called into the office. I've never been called in the office about it. So that's my hard, fast rule that I don't break. So that's some general budgeting things that you can do. 412 funds, we've talked about that. Number 3, I look at 412 as my operating capital for my classroom. Okay? Just think that 3-circle model, the classroom part of it, that's your 412 big funds. And when it overlaps in the middle, some of 412 can leak over and some of it can't. Just know that if a kid's going to take it home and keep it, don't do it out of 412. That's not a state rule. That's an ethical thing, because you don't want to have to answer those questions. Now, because of inflation, this is where I am going to be concerned. I've already kind of worried about it. Last year, I bought 20 cylinders of gases for the shop. $3,300. I've already priced it. I can get half of what I got last year for the same price. So how am I going to, and I need all 20. So how am I going to make up for that? Use more plasma cutter, because I don't have to have a gas for that. Stick electrodes. They make great ones now. They're just as good as MIG, and especially the Lincoln products. I'm going to use more stick electrodes. I'm going to offset my cost because gases are expensive. And now this is how welding companies make money right here. Okay? When I did step out of teaching for a little while and ran a code shop there in Elk City, and our biggest expense was welding gas, and it's the cheapest thing to produce because it's all in the air. They pull it out, they have special machinery. They just pull it out, fill it in a cylinder. All right? It's not a special deal that they had, I'm going to mix this and this and get helium. It's already there. They're just capturing it. So welding gases that's how welding companies welding suppliers make a lot of money, is with gases. So that's going to be your big expense this year. And also, how many of you fix desks? Okay, that's not cheap. I fix a lot of desks as a good gesture for my district. And my maintenance man is like, he'll bring over and drop 40 off in May and want them fixed by August. And I was like, okay, you need to bring me. I've started, hey, I need a gas, I need this. Well, I don't have it. I said, well, I don't have it either. How am I going to fix them? And so he'll come up with it. Because he wants them fixed. So if it's for the district and you're doing the service, they can provide some materials to do the service with. Okay? So that's why I say repairing desks is not cheap, because that gas is expensive, and that .025 wire to weld that crappy metal with, Lincoln makes the best one, and it's not cheap either. It's like $12 a pound for that 025 wire. Okay, activity fund. It's at September 1 and March 1. Those are two big ones, two big dates that you got to keep up with, MFE and ALD and alumni camp. Okay? Now, how many of you bought your alumni camp tickets? How many kids back out? Okay, don't sweat it, because about 2 days before you leave, there's going to be, hey, I need 10 tickets. You can sell and get your money back. You just have to be patient. Don't sweat the bullets. You can get them back. Now, we try to get kids from backing out, the $50 deposit due by the end of school. All right, non-refundable. So if they back out, they lose their $50, but they're not losing $230. You see what I'm saying? So the chapter, you kind of have to do some things, and that's just an Elk City rule. That's not everybody's rule. Okay? But you don't want them backing out. Especially, we had a girl, she backed out because she's going to go to softball camp. Okay? That's her choice. She lost her $50. Okay? So that's just part of it. Always submit a purchase request. Okay? Now, one thing that Tim Taylor deal will show you, if you're doing blue and gold sales, he's got it pre-priced. So a stick of sausage is $6.25 a piece. And when you do the package deal in there, it'll tell you what your bill to blue and gold is going to be before you submit your order. I would submit my purchase request as soon as you know how much you're going to spend to blue and gold. That way your date on your PO is before you receive it. Okay? Purchasing rules say that has to be the day of or day after. It cannot be any time before that. Okay, so always have that purchase request ready to go before you make your order. Like I said, students attending conferences, camps, workshops, educational trips, they can come from, you can pay for their lodging from activity funds. It can be coded that way. We pay for meals on some of those. We don't pay for every meal. We try to book a hotel that has a good breakfast, and we make them pay for their lunch, and then we do a chapter meal in the evening at a vendor that we have where we can do a PO at. If a student has a chance to gain financially from an event, it is suggested that they pay for their own lodging. When we do OIE for our school, we pay for our hotel, the teacher hotel out of 412, and then the students, they will book a room, but they pay for 25%. We put 4 to a room. They pay for 25% of that room cost that they're there. So if they're only there for 3 days, they pay for 25% for 3 days. And they pay it before we leave. Okay? Because as soon as we get back from OIE, we're trying to go to the CDE contest, and we got to have some money to, we don't like to get below a $5,000 limit in our chapter funds, but we're not going to stress out trying to go somewhere because we're trying to get them exposed to as many contests as possible. If they go to livestock shows, we sponsor a kid. We pay a kid. Our chapter sponsors one rodeo student a year, and they pay for a sponsorship. But we don't pay for that kid's rodeo costs. We don't pay entry fees or things like that. But we do sponsor them to put Elk City FFA on their trailer or their rodeo jacket. But anywhere that they can earn rewards, they pay for their lodging and meals. We don't pay for meals at OIE, but we do have Mom Club that will make a bunch of stuff, and we have sandwiches and drinks and stuff at a stall there at OIE that the whole chapter we find a central location they can come and get food at because those $20 corn dogs, they eat them up at OIE pretty quick. Like I said earlier, any item in excess of $2,500, we have our chapter vote on it. Actually, ours is a little lower than that because I'm tight. So anything over $1,000, I make the chapter vote on it. We don't buy stuff without them approving it. And so, like at our August back to school meeting, they have to vote that we're going to spend money to buy MFE ALD tickets because that's a $2,000 to $3,000 bill. So we make them approve that, even though they know it's coming. Banquet Catering, get your quotes early, get it often, okay? Because I can tell you food costs this year, it's going to be hard for us to have a banquet, but we're going to have one. We may have to cook it ourselves because of the price of food. Show equipment, aerosols, when they go to a stock show, they pay for that. Their oils, all the grooming products that they're going to use for an animal that they could earn money from, they pay for that. Now we have a tack box. They put their initials on their can, but we don't, at the end of the show, they take that with them. We just have the box is all we own. We don't, any consumable that goes for livestock show, we make them pay for. And we tell them up front when they start the project, here are some costs you're going to have to endure. So we have those. If you have a show supply account at OIE, make sure you have a PO before you leave to go. Carl Perkins, we talked about this. If your school's in a consortium, make sure that you know that your funds are at that consortium. If you're not, you have to be in the application process. You can't just walk in August 1st and say, hey, I need that Carl Perkins money. What he's going to say no, because you weren't in that application back in March and was due May 5th. It's a big, long process, and Carrie and I are the ones that write it for our district. And so we set out, we called in our FACS teacher, we asked them, we asked our STEM people, and they have to turn in what they want, their program description. If they don't turn all that stuff in, they don't get put in the application. But we give everybody a chance to get in it. But if you know that you were in that application process, you have to talk to your superintendent, because they sign the letter receiving those grants. They're the ones that are going to be distributing those, and they have a different fund code. And it's under your 412, because that's all your program number starts with is 412. But that Carl Perkins has a special code, and it's like a one-time PO thing. It's not like you can get a bunch of little small stuff. It's a one-time big deal. So we did ICV out of it. We've done our laser printer. We've done a plasma cutter. We've done some big ticket items out of that Carl Perkins. But anything that enhances technology in your program is the key to doing it. Some management tools, Google Spreadsheets. Again, here's this free one. Just scan the code, and Mr. Tim Taylor, his is better than what I have, so I'm going to switch to what he has. Learned that yesterday, because he has the pre-formulated options in this spreadsheet. AET has a program management for your budget, but you have to understand true accounting and how that's done. You can't just go in and put it the way you want it. You kind of have to follow their system. You can do QuickBooks. You can do paper ledgers. But as a bullet point, I did say I prefer what Mr. Taylor has, because if I store it in Google, it's going to stay at Google. Okay, it's not going to get lost. And you can ask my teaching partner, I have big black filing cabinets, and I am learning to get away from I need more classroom space, so I'm getting rid of my big black file cabinets, because we are a Google school, and I don't need all that. If I can get my land judging stuff into Google, I'd be happy, because that's one big file cabinet. It's just land judging stuff. So if I can get that converted over, that'd be great. Okay, student projects. We talked about OIE and their Ad Mechanics project. I started in Texas, and so Houston, Fort Worth, San Antonio, San Angelo, those are big project schools or shows that we built projects for. But if a student is building a project for the chapter project auction, remember to list the cost of materials anyway, okay? You don't want to sell your auction item in your project auction and not cover the cost of materials. So our state association has in the FFA website that project card for Tulsa State Fair. And it's pre-formulated to count out and keep up with the hours, because that's expense too. But you can line item all those expenses, put it in there, and then put that with the project, so when they come through and view them, they can see the reserve bid at the bottom. And we make a reserve bid on our projects. If it doesn't meet the bid, it doesn't sell. Okay? Because we can't afford to lose money on it. We've never had one not sell, but we meet our reserve. Okay? We don't want to go backwards in our activity fund. Now, if a student builds a project for OIE to sell, they make the top 5% and they're going to sell it, they have to bring the materials or pay the chapter before they leave for the show. That is from our auditors. Okay? Because Elk City FFA cannot pay the 15% commission to Big Iron. We're not covering that. The student has to pay the $40 entry fee. They have to have all their materials. Now, they can buy their materials through the school, through the chapter. We can order it for them, but we cannot pay their entry fee, and we can't lose, is what the auditors tell us. So We have some students having to figure out what they want to do. We have not got to participate in OIE yet because of those standards, because we don't have the students who can afford all the materials it takes. And I don't nickel and dime them through the year in hopes that they'll do it. I need them to show me a commitment to finishing the project, because that stuff gets expensive. Okay, we ran into this, and it's sad. It is sad. Used to, you could fix old John Earl's trailer down the road, fix those rust spots and stuff where he wouldn't wash up. You can't do it anymore. Our auditors I got ate up, and I wasn't in trouble, but they're like, why are you fixing his trailer? And what gases did you use? When did you rent the cylinders? How do you know if it's a class expense or an FFA expense? All these questions, and they weren't bad. They weren't hard. My job wasn't in jeopardy, but I learned I can't fix John Earl's trailer anymore in my community because the auditor's going to ask questions. Okay? So if they want to fix it, I tell them, here's what I can do. Here's what I need. You bring it back to me. I can fix it. Okay? It is illegal for me to charge him labor, okay, because we're not employing students. But we can fix it, and if you want to give a donation to the chapter, you can, but I cannot require you to give a donation to the chapter. Now, a lot of them are looking for a cheaper fix sometimes, and I always tell them, listen, these are kids fixing this. You need to understand that. They may have only been welding 4 or 5 weeks when you want this fixed, so you need to understand that it may not be what you're going to get if you went down to Janning Welding and did it. That's why you're here, because you don't want to pay that down there. So just understand some of those things and be up front with people. Just tell them up front, okay, what you're doing. Now, okay, the most important part about your money, the people. We're all not perfect, are we? Nobody's 100. Okay? But I take care of my financial people. Our financial secretary, she has made a mistake on some things, and because we kept good records, we were able to fix it. No one had a big issue. There was no big argument. There was no fight. But we took care of it, and she was very positive about, thank you for catching that. Thank you for keeping records. I don't put her in a position where she can't defend me. Okay? When I buy something, I know it's going to be on up and up. If I have to question whether or not a purchase is good, then I don't make the purchase. Okay? My purchasing decision is how many students can I affect with this purchase. That's how I make a purchase for my program. How many students can I affect with it? So that's one of the rules that I use in my head. Be respectful but protective of your activity funds and how they're governed. All right, they are public information. Okay, people can come in and ask to see your financial records. They can do that. They can question you, but they can't spend the money. Okay, so if you don't want to answer their questions at a public board meeting, don't do ignorant things. Okay, be respectful but protective of your funds. Be able to defend your decision. Okay. Communicate with your administration routinely about your program. Mr. Farquhar and I were discussing, I've never had a principal or administrator that is a former ag teacher. There have always been former coaches, okay? And so teaching them about, here's why we had to spend this here, this is, okay? And then they're like, well, I called so-and-so and that wasn't the situation. I understand you called so-and-so and that wasn't the situation, but we're trying to do something different because this isn't working. I'm not, you got to be able to answer that question. Communicate with your administration. Okay, ag teacher told me this when I was coming out. Listen more than you speak. More funds might come your way. They have a carryover fund. Okay. We needed them when tornado took out our greenhouse. They called it a microburst, but it was a tornado. We saw the twirl. They took our greenhouse out in April. Superintendent said, hey, I heard your greenhouse got taken out. How can I help you? I said, well, I have a quote for a replacement. getting a greenhouse. But we can't advertise it because they're not going to put this in the wrestling gym. So we just kind of kept it quiet, all right? But Tornado took it out, so he's helping us with that. So listening more than we speak helps a lot. Take care of your personal finances by not spending your money on the program out of convenience. Preachers, speaking to the preacher here, sometimes it's just easier to go get it myself than have to do a purchase request. But who am I taking that money from? My kid, my family. So those blanket POs, a little planning in July, should help me not do that. Okay? So make sure you take care of your family. They're more important, okay, than your school district. Because after you leave your school, it's still going to be there. Your family's the one that's going to take care of you when you're old. Now, I just look at it, do I want adult diaper money later on? Or do I want to buy that bolt today? So I know my kid's going to have to take care of me. So that's just how it is. Multi-teacher departments must work together on planning the expenditures for the year. I've worked with a teaching partner, just go by willy-nilly. We get called in for their mistake. I didn't like that. I want to communicate. I want to work with my teaching partner. I'm married to mine. We sit down and we do talk about this stuff before we spend money. We know that, hey, 412's first. Activity fund. We know the general rules that we're going to live with. Okay? And remember, each of you are given an amount from Career Tech, so split it equally. Okay? There are some teachers, they control all the money, and they let you have it a little bit at a time. That's up to you and your teaching partners. But that respect and trust is going to have to be there to get it spent equitably. Okay? Also, if you have a chance to thank Miss Longacre, that's in my presentation, but if you have a chance to thank her and Sky McNeil, they're up there. I'm telling you, I taught in different states. Everybody says, well, I'm just going to go to Texas. Listen, this is a better deal over here. I've just lived through that because they don't pay your insurance over there. They don't give you a truck over there. You don't get a budget automatically. So thank her, little postcard, or hey, her favorite thing is a sweet tea with lemon in it from McAllister's. I mean, I'm just telling you. There's some little things you can do to thank her and do that. And then when you're at OIE, just say thank you to people. I know there's been some questionable things about entries when they first came out with the online process, and Cass and I had a good talking relationship. I had my printout. She wasn't upset. She honored the printout, even though the entry wasn't in the cards when I picked up my packet. I mean, there's just communication is a key thing here of being respectful and knowledge and listening more than you talk is a good thing. I heard this, I think at Region 2 in Louisiana. They said this, you never know who's watching you from behind. So when you're treating people the right way, somebody else is watching and they're going to learn, hey man, they're on the up and up. They're on the right thing. Okay? So you never know who's watching you, especially your students are watching you, how you treat people. You're the living project-based learning model of what they're going to become. So the object is not the Grand Drive banner at the end of the deal. The object is the kid that you're training. That's the object that we're trying to make here. Okay? If you would, scan. Where's the yellow scan cards? Were here on the back table at the beginning. Did she pick them up? Okay. If you want the free stuff from Mr. Taylor, this is free. You can scan it. It was a good workshop. If you didn't get to attend, this stuff is pre-formulated. Remember, you can pay your affiliation dues out of 412 money. That it is an approved state expenditure. And pay those quick. Don't wait till November. Don't wait till November. Okay? Mr. Murray, I know he pulls our report. When he pulls our report, we know at Colt Conference who hadn't paid their affiliation dues yet. And so I want to make sure my name's not on that paper because I'm going for that State Superior Chapter Award. So get those. You can do them July 1, and it's easier then. Just pay your affiliation dues. The receipt's already on the FFA webpage. Just pull it down, submit it, they'll approve it, get done. Okay? I would just, in July, do as much of the prep as you can, because when the school bell rings, you're running. Okay? Just do as much as you can, and if you need help, you're going to have to reach out, because a lot of times we don't ask for help from anybody because we don't want people thinking we're not capable or not smart enough. Just reach out. Okay? All right? And now with the age of social media, I'll tell you what, misinformation spreads like wildfire. Okay? So just do that. So I hit the red button now?